So hello and welcome to this presentation, which has the title Migrating to Vue, a story from Runecast. My name is Nikolai Bader, and what will we talk about today? But first of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Nikolai Bader. I'm front-end developer at Runecast. And originally, I'm actually from Germany. Since 1 year, I'm in Brno. And 2 years ago, I started with front-end development in the Black Forest region in Germany. Then I moved to Hamburg and then here. And here's, I guess, the best place, all right? Good. Yeah, let's talk about what we will talk about today. The goal is basically to give you like a high-level overview about what lessons we have learned with migrating to Vue.js. And we have like an old UI originally, which is in jQuery, and we want like to have Vue.js, and this is the journey that we have. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So I will go on and to say, what is Runecast Analyzer, which is the main product of Runecast, and what is Runecast actually, and then like say, okay, what's the problem even with the old UI? Because when you don't have a problem, you don't want something new, obviously. And that's why there should be some pain point. To go through something new, you have to have some problem with the old UI. Then I will talk a little bit separately about what the new UI is with Vue.js, and then talk about the integration. And then I want to, let's say, for people that are maybe interested, maybe tease you a little bit into, maybe you can participate even and play a part in that. Yeah. So now, what is Runecast Analyzer? What is Runecast? So that's basically the start page of the application, Runecast Analyzer. And this is the main product of Runecast. And as you can see there, it's like very heavily having to do with data. This is like important like for front-end developers about like what it is, right? But the user is actually a cloud administrator. And the cloud provider can be, let's say, VMware. Or nowadays, it's also like AWS. This is like the newest edition. And what it does, like for the administrator, it highlights like issues, right? It could be like some kind of problem. Could be like, okay, the configuration is so and so, and now we want to tell you as the user, maybe you need to fix something. And when you log in, you see like the several like maybe trouble points within the cloud environment that you administer. But again, like for the front-end developer, it's like important to know, okay, we have to do with maybe large data sets. So that's what the front-end developer has in mind here, like not the product itself. And it's not so mobile-centric, let's say. It's more like a desktop application. So that's like for the front-end developer. Now we see here like a frustrated person. He doesn't have a computer. And like, what's the problem with the old UI? And I would say like it's like typical. It's a typical like legacy problem. Typical problems that have to do with a legacy application. So originally it was like developed by one front-end expert, I would say, who has like a lot of knowledge, but more like develops for speed, like in the early stage of the company, and he wants to maybe just get going and not like document the code, right? So what happens then is like he doesn't write documentation, and what does it lead to? So there's no documentation. Now let's say a new developer joins the company, and he finds out, okay, and he's like frustrated and doesn't really get it. So, and that's why there's like hidden knowledge. So the original author knows a lot, but the next one won't. And other legacy problem is like tight coupling. It's like, sounds like complicated, but it's like kind of easy to understand that it's like, let's say you change one thing, you want it to like be predictable. And in this application, in the old UI, it is not. So you change something, and it can change something else in like, let's say in unpredictable manner. So that's not good. So, and that leads like to like the change is painful, and that also leads then to we only have then their old technologies, and updates and stuff is hard. So that's why like there's like kind of a motivation now to get to something else, right? And here you also see it. It's a lot of lines of code. Okay, then this is like the new UI. Now it looks a little bit friendlier here, this slide. And this is like obviously with Vue.js. And okay, in our stack, we also have TypeScript because we want to have like more readability and all like general advantages that maybe you know about when you work with TypeScript that this adds to the project. For the styles, we have like this library called Tailwind, which maybe nowadays is like a little bit more common. And this uses like, let's say like CSS utility classes. So it worked out quite nicely to use Tailwind. And for documentation, which like the old UI doesn't have, we have like in the new UI this style guide list. This is like a style guide library. And this will do the following. You can have like documentation like in your component, and then it will automatically deploy with some script. It will automatically deploy like how the component will look like. So and then also like we have a team like 3-4 front-end developers and 2 designers. So we like quite capable group. Now there's like this question. Okay, we have this new UI and we wanted to put it somehow in the old UI. And the question is there like, okay, we have these 2 separate projects. They come from the same server. So how do we get it there? And they're like then different alternatives. So, and to be honest, we had like the first idea was the iframe, which seems like kind of an old idea, but turned out to be good. And an alternative would have been, let's say, something like you have the Vue.js application, which is new UI, and you like make out of that like one big chunk of a Vue component, and you put it into the old UI. So, but it wasn't really something that we went for because like there are some advantages with that. Maybe somebody else would have made use of that, but these advantages, which are usually there with this approach, weren't there for us because it's more like, let's say when you want to have a data flow in both directions, and we only want a data flow in this case from the old UI to the new, because in this case, when you have this legacy app, you don't want, let's say, the new to talk to the old, only the old to the new, because when the new talks to the old, there's all these problems there, and you can't control really what happens, right? So that's why we said, okay, the iframe is really a nice solution, and we start like with one part of the application, which is we call the inventory. So this is like, let's say some really major part of the application is the inventory, where like you have like the hierarchy of your environments, and there you can basically see like all the issues in a hierarchical structure. And there actually is like how it would look like. So in the next slide, it is like nicely visually, like when I flip it. So this is the old UI and this is the new UI. And this is like around it is like the old UI serves as something like a wrapper, and the new UI lives within the old. So, and what I just said was like the inventory, which is this one, right? Was like the first part which we replaced, and then the goal is, okay, let's go step by step, like each after the other. So now I would like to say, okay, what is like the new UI about, and what was the journey a little bit? We just started basically, and now what's the journey? So in the beginning of the project, we wanted to have in mind, let's say, okay, we are like a capable group, so we want to like self-write components, like core components. We don't want to use a third-party library like Vuetify, something like that. We want to like self-write it. So this was the vision, to have Runecast's own UI library. And then we went on and on, like months after month. And with this kind of new territory, the complexity also grew. And then we like said, okay, we need like maybe more professional approach and more like to keep conventions. And then we implemented the new design systems where like also designers that joined could like work on that. And let's go next. And here's like one example of a component. It's like the RC button. It's like I took that like as an example because like quite common component, a button, right? So, and here you see that basically you have like the docs. You can write it in a component, and this is like how the style guide will like deploy it. This looks like that. So this would be like one example of a component, and this would be another. This is the RC data table, it's called, and this is like a table, which is kind of a big thing like to develop for yourself, because there were like ready solutions elsewhere. And also like a table was like self-developed in Runecast. And now just to say, okay, what would be like next steps that Runecast has in mind? So of course, okay, we want to like the migration to continue. Like we want to get to the Vue and only Vue. Like we want to like drop the old UI completely, right? So we continue. We want to add new features and like upward spiral. So what's that? So that means if we add like new features, as the new UI grows, it's more likely that this feature will be within the new UI. So, and that will be then speedier in the development. And also bugs is the same thing. There will be less bugs because the new UI is like better, let's say, right? And that's why it's an upward spiral, so it gets faster and faster, and at some point we can like drop the old UI completely and be like only like, let's say, happy like Vue developers, right? And we want to go, like our plan is to go open source with the UI library that I just showed, like these two, for example. And there will like many more, of course. And this is what we want to put open source. So let's say like you're like developer on your own project, you could like download as npm library, let's say, and then have like these available and open source, so like everybody can basically join. And this is like to say like how can you now participate? So in next days or weeks, we will publish like this npm library, and you can check out GitHub page on Runecast, and will be announced on the Runecast blog. And then no matter what the level of expertise is, and I would say like this is a really, really great project because it's like somewhat mature, but it's not that big like as, let's say, Vuetify is, where you have like 2,000 developers and they're all competing about to write one line or something like that. So this is like mature enough, but still basic enough for like newcomers to join actually and welcome you actually to be part of it. So yeah, so that's so far our journey. Thank you. Yeah, and if you have questions, please. Yes?
How do you share the data between the old UI and the new UI? For example, root user or...
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this iframe has a URL, like it calls a URL source, and in that is a query string, and the root of the new UI detects it and stores it in the Vuex store. So and then it's everywhere available what parameters are passed. So that could be like what's the selected ecosystem, like in that case, and that's then passed to the new UI, so it can work with that. That's a good question. Thank you for the question.
What were the biggest challenges like between, in the process of migrating from one technology to another?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also a good question. And actually, the new UI worked quite smooth, actually. The biggest challenge was actually to have enough knowledge to work on both somehow, because the old UI is so complex, and this is like so hard to get like your way around this code that you're somehow like distracted to get like the new development going, so to say. So you're like lost a little bit in the old, and you forget about the new a little bit, like what you want to do. So this is like kind of a challenge, and you also, when the code base grows, you have to have like some experts on some different parts maybe, and it's kind of then a share of work a little bit more, like distributed work then. So yeah. Yes, please.
Have you found some issues with the iframe solution? Because I heard about some other solutions for microfront.
Mm-hmm. So actually not. We waited that it maybe some user feedback could be a problem, and some say as an objection, like could be like a security issue or so. But this is only the case when you like have like external website or something like that in your own project, then you can control what's going on. But we serve it actually from our own server, so there were no problems actually. So one problem could actually be, let's say you have something like a click outside event or something like this. So you have, let's say you have modal and you click outside it and it will disappear. And if you click, let's say, outside of the new UI and in the old, this outside click is not detected. So something like this is not so big, it's a tiny problem, let's say, that you have there. So of course there's some downsides to everything, but actually it in general worked really nicely. Mm-hmm.
Do you delete the old code gradually, or will you just like make a ceremony at the end and do the whole thing?
You know, we are very afraid actually to delete anything there. Because you never know what happens. It's like it's really like a bit of it's a bit of black box, because it's like tens of thousands of lines of code. Yeah, really. And then you're like really afraid to do like the most tiny change actually. So we don't delete it. We wait for the migration to be finished and the new UI to be so good that we can drop the old and then just forget about it. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe this is more like a backend question.
Mm-hmm.
But the old UI, I think, was rendered by PHP or some other backend technology with jQuery or other stuff. The new UI at Vue is like more standalone app, right? Or is it rendered by the backend technology also?
It's deployed in the same way. It's like I think it's a Spring, as a Java Spring application, and it's deployed with Maven and Jenkins. So it's like the same actually.
Why did you choose Vue besides other technologies?
Right. Also, like for my personal story, I only knew Vue. Like when I was starting 2 years ago, my first job was in Vue because I was then a beginner, and 2018 is not so early. And for beginners, it's just friendlier, like to start with Vue. Like the others, like I think they come from a different perspective a little bit, like React and Angular. A little bit more complex. Of course, they're also like valid choices. And the other developers that are available to us, they also like prefer Vue. It's like more beginner friendly, and has like all the advantages the other options also have. Like that's what we saw. So, thank you.
I was also thinking like why you chose TypeScript with Vue, and also why you went with your own custom UI library. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, and if you were in that position now, if you do it the same way, or if you would go with some.
Yes. So like TypeScript, yeah. So just like the nature of the application is like that. There are a lot of aspects to it, and these objects have like a lot of keys, and you want basically to have like good structure behind it. And if you didn't have like TypeScript, it would be like you had a much harder job to make the application readable and scalable. So we went for TypeScript, and then like this is something we certainly don't regret. And with the UI library, so far we are really happy with it. I think if there was a new feature and it's like something totally complex component that we would need to add to it, I think maybe we would consider even to to a third-party library, so it's not a dogma or so. But still, so far it worked out quite nicely, and like I think we have also other developers in the company that are also quite capable people, and we're like really happy with what is like developed, and so we're actually quite happy with what we did.
But doesn't it like consumes a lot of time to create something like that?
Yeah, it does actually, but we're also having like fun with it actually. So it's a kind of cool thing to do. And let's say you had a third-party library, and like the designer says doesn't understand really what the limitations of that are, and you then change something there, and it's kind of be painful to like let's say make something else to be what it's not supposed to be, and then there would be like communications back and forth and stuff like that. So I think it's like good to have like full control actually. It's like also taste. Some people like that, to have something handy and ready, and some people like to do things themselves, like in other areas of life. So it's like taste question also. Maybe that you? Yeah.
Well, right now you're working with Vue 2, right? Are you thinking about upgrading to Vue 3? If yes, are you thinking about using the composition style or the option based, or what are your thoughts about it?
With Vue 3, I'm personally having like I'm not totally like expert on what Vue 3 will bring, but we have talked internally, and we have like made an approach where there won't be like any breaking changes when we will update.
I heard that there will be a problem, especially if you're using TypeScript right now, because there is a different way of dealing with TypeScript in Vue 3, because right now you're using...
But it's like, there's like two different ways. I think there's like this Vue property decorator, it's called, and this is like the way we have it like from the Vue CLI, like out of the box there. But that's not how we have done it. I think the other way is like with Vue.extend, and this is like a different approach, which won't break with Vue 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Want this one? Okay, cool. Nice.
Great. So thank you for the presentation.